Welcome to the Pulse Check podcast. Fraser, how are you today?
I'm good, and thank you for inviting me. I say inviting me, I am part of Synpulse 8. And obviously with Synpulse 8, I head up design globally, but I have been given the de facto title of Director of Podcasts. However, I guess the viewers can't see what's in front of me. We do actually have a proper director here to keep us in check. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're the partner in crime when it comes to this podcast idea. So thanks also for shaking me up to do this. Today, of course, we will talk about your strength in design and have a lot of questions. But typically, I want to start with an icebreaker. So what is something that makes you unique? What makes you you?
What makes me me? I'm going to try and maybe segue into design. And we get asked this question as designers a lot. Where do you find inspiration for design? I don't really go out looking for inspiration in design because I think when you're out looking for it, you never find what you're looking for. But the type of design that we do is, we call it experience design. And it's more so about solving problems for people. So where I find my inspiration is I run like yourself, maybe not as fast as yourself. We have raced before, but normally you're miles ahead of me. But I do find inspiration when I go out running. I get to clear my head and kind of decompartmentalize some of the problems or challenges that our clients bring us. Now, when it comes to design and experience design, it's not about one person. It's about the users that we design for. But really, I take that time when I run to really figure out a problem and understand that problem on a deeper level. I'm sure you can probably attest to that when you are running.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, actually, it took me a 30K run on a Saturday morning where I finally realized, hey, we have to do this podcast. Of course, we're not the first one with this idea, but there is not that many podcasts in APAC related to financial services, especially going also into the full cycle from the user experience and then into also deep tech. So going maybe into that topic for today, is there the perfect user journey? Does this even exist?
It's a good question. It's a hard question. Mm-hmm. I like the hard questions, but I mean, to be honest, the perfect user journey will never exist, especially when it comes to the type of experiences that we build, especially for financial services. We rely a lot on technology, and we use technology, and technology is always expanding, becoming better. So as the technology becomes better, we can create better experiences for a user. I think if you'd asked me maybe 10, 15 years ago, where I saw financial services or what mediums would we be consuming financial services on as customers, I would have still said desktop. Because back then it was very complex. We were actually, as banks, I did work internally for a bank when I started my career. We were just taking branch processes and digitizing them. These were quite complex processes, but giving the user the ability to say make payments, apply for credit cards. I would have never have guessed, I probably wouldn't have put money on it, that in 10, 15 years time, we're using mobile phone devices as the main medium to consume digital banking. So again, back to the question, does that exist? Does the perfect journey exist? It does, and it doesn't. And again, different users require different journeys. I'm sure we're going to definitely discuss that in more detail throughout the interview. But yeah, as technology enhances, we're going to be enhancing the customer journeys, we're going to be enhancing the experiences, and we'll be enhancing the way people consume those experiences.
Yeah, starting then maybe with, besides the do's, the don'ts, and let me take back the segue to running. If you want to sign up for a race and you take up the mobile phone, go to the link, and the first thing that happens, there is a queue or you're waiting, you cannot proceed. That's probably one of the worst experiences, right? So what are some maybe war stories of worst experiences you've seen in banking?
Worst experiences in banking? It's very hard because, again, I'm talking from myself as the user. So my likes, my dislikes are probably different from yours, although I think that we sometimes share some of the same frustrations. So yeah, the queuing, I find that when you are queuing to maybe get a ticket, actually I was lucky enough to get Glastonbury tickets this year, and I'll be going next week. But the exact same thing happened. I think there's 250,000 tickets, but you get put into a queue and just keep on redirecting. So you don't know where you are in that queue. You don't know if by pushing refresh, it's going to put you out of that queue. So maybe not related to financial services, but it was related to making a payment to purchase those tickets. Again, this could be simplified by saying you are X customer in the queue. Just to give the insight or to give the knowledge to the user that you are somewhere and you're getting close. I think so that was a concert ticket site. But again, I think that could be adopted again for financial services, especially, and again, maybe this is not so much my area, but telephone banking, you never know where you are in the queue. You could be 50, you could be 60. In the queue, and that could be 5 minutes, it could be 30 minutes.
I mean, I could give you a number of examples, but one we talked about frequently, which seems to frustrate a lot of users, is if you go on holidays and suddenly either you lose your credit card and you want to block it, which would be just a simple process, and not all banks have adopted it yet. Fully acknowledge that, but that should be the easiest, just block your credit card. But the other annoying thing is that suddenly your credit card or also your ATM card gets blocked and you want to unblock it. And I had a very bad experience being in a location that I travel to, or actually go to very often because we have an office there in Thailand, not far from here. And I've made a transaction I went to an ATM just to get cash to pay the taxi. And my card was blocked. And I couldn't do anything on the app. I could have unblocked my credit card, but not the ATM card. And I had to get someone on the phone, long queue, as I said before, very frustrating. And they actually had to call up someone in the operations team to unblock my card, which is completely ridiculous. So a very simple example of where everything was wrong in terms of the user journey. So, of course, most experiences are maybe not as brutal as that. And there are some more fine metrics of measuring the user journey. So that's probably my next question. How do you measure really a user journey in terms of, you call it friction score, or how do you do it?
So there is multiple ways to measure what a good experience is. So friction, or how long it takes a customer to perform a specific task. Now, we could go down a huge rabbit hole here because there's good friction and there's bad friction. But we're now in this day and age where we are seeing AI embedded within financial services that can start to understand the user. So actually what I'm saying now is we should be moving, and we are moving, to that segment of one. Again, back when I started designing for financial services 21 years ago, we put people into buckets. You're this bucket or you're that bucket. So you're just a retail customer or you're a wealth customer or mass affluent. But now we can actually look at a specific user behavior and see how they interact. So if we take, for example, either a millennial or maybe myself, yourself, I think we're millennials, right?
I was just before, I think I was Gen X, but yeah, more or less.
We're millennials, but we like to get things done really fast. We don't want to be, we're not slow, we understand the process, so we go really fast through a specific journey. Now, if you take on the flip side, and maybe I'll mention my dad, because I sometimes feel like IT support for my dad, but if he has a mobile phone, he does understand mobile banking, digital banking. Now, for example, his behaviors of using the apps, he will probably be a bit slower. Not because he's slow, but because he's more into the details. He's looking at what he's signing up for. He's reading the terms and conditions. He may hesitate because he maybe doesn't understand something specific that he's being asked. So again, we're now looking at that segment of one. We're not just creating one user journey, but to my dad's example, maybe as a bank, we want to add more friction to that journey. or make it a slightly bit longer so that he feels more secure with the process. Whereas a millennial or people like ourselves, where we go on and we just want to apply for that credit card, or we want to get that loan, or we want to put that deposit or buy that trade, we're going to go a lot faster and we're okay with less friction. So again, it's really down to the user. Again, it's made our jobs harder because we don't just design one journey for all. We have to think about, do we add certain bits of friction to make people feel more secure? And we can do that on onboarding as well. Again, with the AI that's in banking already, we just learn about behaviors. We can learn what type of user you are. Are you a fast or are you a slow user? And don't get me wrong, back 20 years ago when I first started my career in designing for financial services, when we were designing, say, a homepage for a bank, we would have fast links. We'd have links on there that we knew that with people that actually know what they're doing, they can go through the fast link and they're there. We had other links that were, I say, slower links that added on to the journey at the beginning. Again, to make people feel secure about what they're doing. And it's really down to the user and that individual.
It's a very good point. So you mentioned segmentation in terms of where people are being put in buckets, which of course no one likes. Plus also it's not only unfair, it's also not correct. I see for myself personally even a few personas, right? So it's better to talk about persona, but few personas in a sense of I'm a business owner, I do business transactions, and my behavior will be very different if I do a business transaction than if I do a private payment when I go on holiday, or if I, as an investor, make investments. In certain journeys, I want to be much more careful because I do it for the business, where we have 1,300 people that are depending on the business going well and that everything is smooth. When I do my own transactions on, let's say, my virtual banking card, I might be not as diligent. So, and when it comes to investment, I may also have separate accounts with the more trading gamble account, call it, or the more long-term account where I invest. So you could even have personally different personas. Maybe you're not behaving completely different, but it's still different, right? So how do you define those personas to start with, and how do you use them then to define the journeys?
So today and right now, it's quite hard. So if we look at banks in general, they're quite siloed, and that's down to legacy core systems. So say a regular bank will have a retail arm and they'll have a retail banking app. They'll also have a wealth arm and a wealth app. They may have an SME arm and an SME app. So within those individual apps, I'm sure there will be AI running to understand you as a person. So those apps will tailor themselves, or could tailor themselves around your experience and add friction, remove friction. But actually what we're seeing now, and it's been a long time coming, where banks are now moving to that one app strategy. So getting rid of the 10, 15, or however many apps they decide to have because of the siloed technology. They're finding ways, either that through a full core replacement of everything, or looking at orchestrating or using APIs to orchestrate the data coming out into one app. So when we start seeing those one apps, we could call them a super app, then what we'll do, or what we could do, is again, start using AI, machine learning, to understand your behavior on certain aspects or certain sections of that app, be it wealth, private, SME, retail, and again start tailoring that experience around you and the individual. But again, it's all around the behavior, how you interact with the app, how fast you are at interacting with the app. Depending on that is really how we would serve content to that user.
Yeah, you come to a fundamental issue first before you can even define that persona and make the right user journey for that persona, is that consolidated view that is missing still across the globe, but especially where we live here in Asia. By right, there is China probably a bit unique, where you have the super apps already, WeChat and others, and the mini programs, so you can have 5 bank accounts on the same app and probably easier aggregate. Here, the new 8 virtual banks, they all, again, created their own apps again. And if you bank with several banks, you use different apps. Plus, the bigger banks, I've mentioned this many times, they have, as you said, 4 or 5 apps themselves. And by right, there are different legal entities and so on. There are reasons for why it is what it is today, but it definitely needs to be solved. And as a user, I want to have everything at one place, ideally.
Yep.
And in another conversation I had, it also came up that typically most users use only 5, 6, 7 apps really frequently, while they have 50 plus apps probably on their mobile phone or even more. So how can you trim it down? And so consolidated view is one thing. Do you see banks already going that way, or do you advise banks towards that direction?
We see it with open banking. We see it a lot in Europe. So BBVA are probably the gold standard. They have a very interesting use case where actually you don't need to be a customer of BBVA to use their app, which is very smart because they are allowing users to sign up and actually sign up with very little credentials. So using Apple Pay, for example, not Apple Pay, Apple ID, your Apple ID, you can sign up very quickly. Then you can add your external bank accounts, so that's pulling them in, so completely free for the user, so freemium banking, but pulling all those bank accounts together within the BBVA app. So it's kind of try before you buy, but I guess from a BBVA point of view, they're now getting data. They're getting data from external sources about your financial habits, whereas as a user, you're getting that consolidated view. And then as a bank, they could start offering or promoting their services based on your behavior, how you're using that aggregation of accounts. So we do see it coming. I hope soon we're going to see it in Hong Kong and across APAC when we start seeing HKMA mandating open banking or mandating it for the bank. So I think BBVA are one of the best examples. We also have aggregators like Mint in the US. So we do see it happening, but I think probably the best example is, BBVA.
I think this will definitely come, and I mean, banks are missing out if they don't go towards that direction. I mean, it's brilliant to say, hey, you can actually use our app even if you're not a bank customer, and maybe even start to explore already also offers that bank has, and then, hey, you have actually... I mean, we always talk about this, the banking products are all the same. It's the more the user journey, the experience that actually then drives you towards a certain product that you may anyway need, be it from, of course, a number of credit cards, but also doing certain transactions, investments, and so on. And if you then would start to explore, maybe then you realize, hey, actually, I want to also open an account with that bank specifically. And for me, virtual banking, invisible banking should also go in that direction, that you may not even realize with which bank you're actually banking right now. You're just following whatever you want to do, whatever product you want to buy. And there might be a platform, as you said, through open banking, a bank as a platform provider providing that product specifically. Fully aware that, of course, the banks don't want to lose the direct access to the customer. That's why they want to own you. But opening up definitely helps in that regard. Now, you mentioned AI before. So how do you think specifically how AI can change the user experience? You said persona. Are there other identifying the persona, making it a bit more tailored, but are there other elements that AI could help?
So the big one is the behavioral, looking at the behaviors of the user, which we can then start using for insights. So we talk about hyper-personalisation. We've been talking about it for 2 or 3 years. It's been a buzzword. I don't think we're really there yet to that hyper-personalized experience, but we are getting there. So, for example, I can provide insights to you. So maybe where you spend. So, for example, if and I know you're super healthy, you eat in the healthiest places in Hong Kong. And again, the AI machine learning can understand, okay, you eat at, say, Treehouse. So this is a healthy guy. And maybe you go to yoga, we can see that. So we can start building a picture around that user. And then, for example, we can start maybe offering investments that are maybe ESG related. So we can use AI to do that, or provide products or solutions that are tailored to your lifestyle. So that is a really interesting space. And again, I think only in the last 2 or 3 years, we've really started to see this getting going. What I would like to see, though, is more embedded insights within apps. I think sometimes the banks get these insights, but they put them within a separate tab. So it's not in context for when I'm looking at, say, my transaction records online. If the insight was embedded, maybe at the transaction level, it's of more value to the customer. Now, I know the second question that's probably going to come up is Gen AI. How is that going to change? I think the banks are interested in it. I don't think the banks are going to adopt it anytime soon from a customer point of view. Again, I think Gen AI, it's great. 98% of the time it gets things right, but you've got that 2% of the time, and what a bank doesn't want is maybe Gen AI to drop an F-bomb to a customer, which it could do. And it's been seen using it online, it can sometimes get it wrong. So I don't see the banks not necessarily wanting to take that risk yet. But where I do see from a Gen AI point of view is, so banks using it internally. So from an RM point of view, from a teller point of view, to help prompt them to have the conversation with the customer.
I mean, on that note, in another episode with Jung, our head of data expert in that area, I think the issue is that most banks and insurance companies didn't do the basics right yet. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's the worst experience, of course, if they leverage data in the wrong way. But there's some simple things like making sure when they call you to sell you any product, which they should anyway not call me, if behavioral analytics, they will realize I hate getting a call from a bank because I'm always on call and I rather want to get a message or whatever. But the worst example is if they even speak the wrong language. So they should at least understand that I prefer speaking in English or German, and definitely not Cantonese. Unfortunately, would love to speak it, but I don't. So really getting the basics right. And then, of course, you can do so many better things. And brings me to the last question of today, as we're probably running out a bit of time. But towards the channels, I mean, we talk a lot about mobile channel, but there's also the branch, and I hate the branch as well. So I see banking everywhere, but never in a bank. Typically, the younger generation, millennial, but even Gen X, Gen Y, they would not want to go to a branch, but do it on mobile, but maybe not even on mobile. And that's where Gen AI could be interesting, is that you just through your headset or whatever call up, okay, get a message, by the way, your latest phone bill came in, or a water bill. Do you just want to settle it? And you just say yes. You don't even need to scroll or do anything. And maybe if it's a big amount, there is a call back or whatever it is, right? So 10 years from now, where do you think is that coming back to perfect user journey gonna be? And is it even on a mobile phone or is it somewhere else?
Good question, hard question to answer. Maybe we should start watching The Simpsons, because The Simpsons typically are able to predict the future. So yeah, we should watch The Simpsons more. Maybe Elon Musk will put a chip in our brain and I might just have to think, send Salomon that £10 or $10 and it's done. I know, jokes aside, I think, so the banks have always looked, and even 5-10 years ago, we were working on projects where we were looking at augmented reality. So a good use case or a potential use case, and some of the banks did adopt it, is being able to bring up your camera, point it around and see where maybe the nearest ATM was. It was an interesting use case. I don't think it was really used by users efficiently. But in 10 years time, so now we're getting things like the spatial design. So we look at Apple's Apple Vision, for example. We also have Ray-Ban Meta. Do I think it's there yet, though? Potentially not. I mean, we look at Apple Vision. It's $3,000 for a headset. It's nearly 3 times the cost of their mobile phone. So I think for us to get there, first off, that price point needs to come down because it needs to be used by the masses. Also, it's the wearability. I think it needs to, and back to your point where banking becomes invisible or ubiquitous, I think a lot of this wearable tech needs to become invisible.
But assuming it's there, because I mean, we also didn't think that we will have a mobile phone, a smartphone in the way we have it today. And people may have been laughing when Steve Jobs stood on stage and said, "Hey, I give you a smartphone." It will be there eventually, right? And is it not more intuitive to just, and that's again also ChatGPT, use your finger or your voice or your whatever eye direction to quickly navigate through some actions you just want to take quickly and not scroll through various screens. And you could just be asked, hey, do you want to do this today? Do you want to make an investment? Markets have been volatile. Do you, instead of me going first and checking and doing, so it could be much more intuitive, right?
I mean, I don't think we need to wait 10 years for that. It's a discussion that I've had previously with banks, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm not going to say the name because all our iPads will probably go off, but we should be able to say, hey, can I afford to go to Tango Steakhouse tonight? Yeah. And the voice assistant should come back and say, well, no, looking at your bank account, you overspent a little, but why don't I recommend, I don't know, McDonald's. You can afford McDonald's tonight. Do you want me to put that order in for you right now and you can pick it up near your house? So now the technology can do that. I just don't see it, or it's not been adopted to do that. I think, yeah, it can read basic things like statements, but there's some really good use cases. I know in Hong Kong, we're lucky, we have a very good public transport system, but other places in the world where you have to drive your car, you could be driving your car and talking to your assistant, pay this bill, have a look at this trade for me. Can I afford to go to this restaurant, etc., etc. And then the assistant providing you suggestions through AI, machine learning, and your spending behavior, your spending habits, suggestions as to what you could do, what you can't do. I think that technology is already there.
Yeah, agreed.
We'd love to see the banks adopt that.
Yeah, and maybe to summarize this now a bit, starting with the fact, of course, there needs to be an aggregated, consolidated view to really say, can you afford it or not? Because maybe on that bank account, I'm overdrawn, but I have another bank account where I have 100,000 just lying around. So having that consolidated view, having really the mastery across all data, do the basics right. And first of all, don't call me, but maybe text me. But it's exactly the example of, hey, I want to go for a holiday trip. Can I afford it? If not, can I finance it? Can I do a buy now, pay later, whatever it is? Can I afford a house? What kind of a house? And have that much more intuitive and playful and a better journey than just, oh no, now I need to go and queue in front of a branch. And having it tailored, of course, towards your needs, with the persona design along that journey. So very interesting conversation. I'm sure we could talk for hours, but looking at the time, we're almost on it. Is there any last words or tips or thing you want to raise?
I just think, we're still scratching at the surface with financial services when it comes to user experience. And quite rightly, as you pointed, all the banks have the same products. So the main differentiator, the only differentiator is how is that experience passed on to the customer? Happy customers recruit other customers. So, and again, that's probably why I've spent 21 years in financial services, because there's so much that we can do. And again, all aided by new technology. So I think we've got an exciting time ahead of us. It just makes our job a lot harder. I know we joke about Gen AI and coming in and typing in, create a design for us. I don't think that's ever going to happen because our jobs are going to become much, much more complex. So I guess that's maybe my takeaway. I think designers are safe at the moment.
For sure, at least another few years. No, thank you so much. Very insightful, Fraser. And with this, I think we can only recommend watch our Pulse Check podcast on all social media, and we will for sure make a follow-up in a couple of months on the next trends in data, AI, but especially also user journeys, design. Thank you, Fraser, and talk again soon.
Thank you, Salomon, and talk to you again soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.